Hi guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. It's the Improvement Season podcast. It's me, Steve Hall, and on the other end, you might not recognize him. Are you wearing a hat, Pascal, because of your hair? Because you haven't had a haircut yet?
Yeah, kind of.
This is what I always do.
I haven't been to a barber in a very, very long time. It was actually a couple of weeks before before the WMBF UK. I do remember that well because I thought okay, I should get an appointment right before the WMBF UK. Never ended up doing that because I thought, no, the hair is still looking all right. Ever since then, I wasn't there, and my hair is now getting to the point where it really always kind of annoys me because it sometimes actually is getting into my eyes, and it's kind of annoying.
You're not receding at all, are you? You're pretty good there.
No, not really, but my hair is thinning. That is something that I definitely can tell, over the past years. The thing is that you don't really notice it as much because I always have my hair back. Yeah. Right? Back when I was in my early 20s, so indie rock time, I had actually always styled my hair that is kind of here in the front. It was kind of the emo indie rock time. And there I always had kind of very thick hair, or very dense rather. And now if I do that, I can feel like, oh shit. This has thinned out quite a lot because I do it so rarely. It's the same as when you are, I don't know, you haven't been to your normal gym for a very long time, and there's amazing lighting, and then you have been gaining or cutting, and you always only see yourself in the mirror at home, and you think no, I'm not looking that great. And then after a year, you come back to the gym. You see yourself in that lighting in that mirror, and you just think, holy shit, that's not what I was looking like 1 year ago. That is basically the same thing with my hair, but 10 years have passed. So, yeah.
I don't know if I would have... I don't know. I was going to say I don't know what's worse, thinning or receding, but I would say probably receding. But I think I'm getting a bit of both.
You think so? Yeah, I mean, you could always get your hair transplant when you're receding, right? I mean, and then it really becomes the question of do you then want to have thin hair?
Yeah.
Maybe both is the worst combination.
Yeah, definitely the worst. Yeah. There will become a time, I think, for me where I will need to shave, just go egghead. I think that will come. But
that's all right when you're then older.
Okay.
I think that's just a good style to have when you're an older man, I think. Thick beard and then kind of semi-bald, but you're shaving it to be bald.
The really interesting thing is, though, I think people perceive you differently. When you have, if you have even actually, we're bringing this up, I bet you people perceive you differently with tattoos.
Yeah.
Even just the fact you've got them, they're like, this guy's a bit edgy. He's not straight down the line.
To be very honest, when you told me that you're getting a tattoo, I was never, we know each other since a long time now, and I've never thought that you are someone who's getting a tattoo at any point.
Yeah. I never. And
then now you're getting a
tattoo
tattoo done on Sunday.
I keep I was like, Steve, when you get it in your head, so I started Googling what are the risks of getting a tattoo, and I was like, how does this tattoo even stay for life? You shed skin and stuff. I was like, they inject into the dermal layer and the body attacks it, so but it stays permanently. I was oh shit, I just assumed they were safe. Everyone has them.
What's very cool, you would need to watch a tattoo session where they are doing a close-up in slow motion. It's super interesting because it really hammers into the skin, and you see the skin actually waving and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
It's super, super cool actually to see that.
It
just makes you appreciate the art of tattooing even more, because you would need to so it's just practice, of course, right? How skin is actually moving or behaving when you are actually then using different kind of styles and all that kind of stuff. Because it's not like paper, right? It is actually a moving thing, and also just like an organ. So that is very, very cool to see, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet. It still makes me... I'm actually, whenever I think about it, I'm like, fuck, am I really doing this?
Yeah.
I'm not...
You have a very, very good motive, though. Like
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, as in the design.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for it. I can't wait, but I'm not worried about like caring 50 years down the line that I've got it or whatever. It's more just the process of I'm not scared of the pain. It's just the thought of it is what kind of makes my stomach turn. But I'm sure I'll get through it. And next time on the podcast, I'll probably lift my arm up and you'll be able to see it there.
I'm excited.
Very excited. Yeah.
I always have my moments where I'm just like craving to get a tattoo done once again.
I bet.
But it's like I told you, my tattoo artist, I have to wait for like 1.5 years to get an appointment. And in that time frame, it's always like, And also, secondarily, there has been a change in the EU now with colors. Certain colors are now forbidden, or a lot of colors. All the colors basically are forbidden, and that's why currently it's only possible to get black and white tattoos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because some of the pigments in the color. So it is actually quite complicated. Well, it isn't really that complicated. A lot of the stuff and ingredients of those colors is also being used in cosmetics and makeup products, and to at those quantities that is then being used in makeup, it has shown to actually be a little bit cancerous. Being able at risk of getting cancer. But this has been in very, very high quantities of those kind of ingredients, which you can only find in super, super small amounts in those colors as well. And that's where they then extrapolated that the colors are actually dangerous and cancerous to those people as well, when there's no real evidence to back that up. There are no long-term studies on that when it comes to tattoo colors and stuff like that. And tattoo colors have evolved over the past, especially last 20 years, extremely much, because of course back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was more like, it was really just a thing for like sailors and I don't know, criminals and all that kind of stuff. This is also where then people have that association from.
Yeah.
But in the last 20 years, it has been so popular overall that, of course, when there is demand for something, big brands jump on board because there is a lot of profit to be made. And this is also then where things are developing and evolving at a rapid speed. So yeah, it's unfortunate. We will see what comes out of it over the next couple of years, because I want colors, that's for sure. And yeah.
I was going for, I don't know if it's, apparently having it on the inside of your forearm, which is where I'm having it, is a very safe first place to get one. Apparently it's highly recommended for a first timer.
Yeah.
But I went for just going black and white, I guess, just because it's like my first one. And I guess you can get it like colored in if you want at some point, maybe. But yeah.
It always depends on what style it is.
Sure.
When it's a style like mine, they are doing just like shading, where it's like they are using a lot of needles at the same time. It's like you put layer upon layer, whereas other styles, you actually have like lines and then you are coloring it out, right?
Okay.
And for my style that I've used with the vast majority of my tattoos, that's not possible to actually then color it out like later. But now that I realize it, I could just travel to the UK and actually get my tattoo done there, because it's a EU kind of restriction. So it could just come over Brexit. Finally, there's something good about Brexit.
Oh, man. Yeah. So actually, and on the note of expense, I had no idea how much these things cost. I knew they wouldn't be like ridiculous because, like you said, quite a lot of like working class individuals generally had them. But I would imagine each of your arms are probably coming to like $1,000.
It's more. It's more.
More.
Yeah. I think that at some point I did the math for my right arm. I think it ended up being like 2,400 euros or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I could imagine that it's now a little bit more because, of course, you're also paying for the experience of the tattoo artist. And
Sure.
I've done this one, I can't even recall, like started the arm like 8 years ago or so. So this is an additional 8 years of experience that you're then now paying for as well.
I didn't even like, this is literally what I did. I reached out to the tattoo parlor and then just started conversing with whoever was on the email end and just showing, like, posting back and forth pictures and designs of different tattoos, and then kind of came to a conclusion of what this one's generally going to look like. And they're going to send me the artwork tomorrow, I think. So I didn't even think about, like, I don't know, I haven't like investigated my artist, or I feel like I've kind of jumped into this without realizing exactly what I'm getting. But you looked at the parlor and you kind of okayed it, so it makes me feel
hopefully the person who's also then tattooing you is one of the good ones there, because I couldn't really tell, right? I just saw the probably the owner of the tattoo studio, but I wish you luck. And and the thing is that at first you have no idea. It's the same when it comes to nearly everything in life. Yeah. And we can now, because we are, of course, not a tattoo podcast, we are a fitness podcast. You can even kind of compare it to something like fitness and nutrition. You have to get your feet wet. You have to actually basically jump into the pool and then come out of it. And then either you were able to swim or you weren't, right? I've gone through the same experience as well. I got into getting my first tattoo and I had no idea what's possible. I had no idea about what is a good tattoo parlor and what is a good tattoo and what does a good tattoo look like and what styles are out there. I had no idea. And I was first really then kind of doing my due diligence and in quotation marks, researching that on the web, what is possible, what I really do like, then with the upcoming years. And that's why when I take a look at my first tattoo, it isn't good. It doesn't look good. It's also something that I wouldn't do again. But at the same time, it has taught me a lot and actually brought me into then learning more about it, right? And also it's now part of me. And I've done the first one when at the age of 18, of course. You are changing as a person, especially throughout your 20s. And it's not a surprise that I don't really feel as much that it's part of my identity anymore, or who I am, than it was back when I was 18, of course. And that's all right. And I think Vegeta will always be with you. So I don't think that you will regret it, to be honest.
I was just going to further the analogy where if you are coming into things, if there's someone in your corner who's more experienced with that matter, like training and nutrition, you can get guidance from them and hopefully skip some of the mistakes that person made. Yeah. So I'm hopefully by having had you kind of at least look at them, and I'll send you the artwork so that you're like, oh yeah, that looks whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And then get the name as well of the tattoo parlor so that I can check out their work. And then I also further need to give you some instructions of the healing process as well.
But luckily that's during my deload week. So that's, I mean, not that it sounded like it needed to have been that time, but that's only going to have benefited the recovery and everything. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it, very nervous about it. And that's the big news here. Let's get into something a bit more relevant to the listeners. Yeah. How are things on your end? How's your recovery going?
So recovery process is still so sometimes I'm just like, oh shit, is that still normal and stuff like that? And then I'm finding myself Googling things, and it's still first 9 weeks ago since I've finished the surgery, right? And, it's healing well. I mean, I have still some nerve issues on my right side of the lat. And I was unsure of where it comes from, but now I think I found the source, and that is really close to the scar at my armpit. Whenever I press on a specific point, I actually feel then the pain on the back of my lats. It's kind of annoying, but when it comes to those kind of nerve sensations, this can be normal after or during the procedure of a surgery. These things can last for up to like 6 months when nerves are really getting irritated during surgery. So it could end up being a long-term thing then. But overall, things are now starting to look better and better and better. Swelling comes down further and further and stuff. And now I'm back also in training hard again. I've just finished my first week of a proper mesocycle, and man, it feels good. Honestly. I'm able to push it as hard as I was before the surgery again.
Amazing.
Also in terms of the chest, nothing in my way there. And it feels amazing. Honestly, feels so good to be back. And it's so crazy. What I realized is how much of a difference loose skin does to your physique, unfortunately. Because I can really see now the difference in terms of my chest and the way that things are being shaped up and all that kind of stuff, and the way that I perceive myself in terms of fatness or how fat I really am.
Wow.
Right? Now that my chest is actually flat and the skin is kind of stretched and my stomach area and all that kind of stuff isn't, I can see that difference, right? Because I went through it myself, right? I always had like loose skin, and that gives you the perception that you're much fatter than you actually are. And I can really now tell the difference due to that discrepancy on my very much top half of my upper body and then the lower half of my upper body. And that is actually very, very unfortunate. So, guys, when you have loose skin, sorry for that. But the best thing that you then can do is try to avoid it for the next generation and try to keep them at least aware of getting fat and going through the same fate as you, right? Because I'm not getting a surgery for then my stomach. So because that is too insane of a procedure in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, because they are cutting out skin, right? Yeah. And it also doesn't really look good most of the time. I mean, especially for those very, very big areas where they're taking the skin away. I think for me personally, because I don't have like extremes amount of excess skin, it possibly could end up still looking good. But this is something that I don't really want to do, to be honest.
In regards to your training, what's your kind of general split looking like? You 6 days a week or?
Yeah, still like push-pull legs, just because I enjoy that split the most, to be honest.
And delts are still at 6?
Pardon?
Delts, side delts still at 6 times per week.
I know, right? It's more like 4 to 5 from the top of my head. I don't really know, because I was in those sessions, and sometimes when I'm starting with a completely new split, for example, and it's also an entirely new macro cycle.
This is a good point.
I feel things out in the sense of like I'm going into the session and assess of the session fatigue that I'm building up, how much time I'm actually also spending, and based off of that, I'm adding things or subtracting things. And it also then could be that I'm adding a different exercise even, not just like volume or so, right? And this is where also their experience comes a little bit into play, where I know I have like a threshold that I know that I'm able to recover from. And in a session, if I feel kind of still recovered, if the session only lasted like, I don't know, 35 minutes, I'm thinking like, okay, I could probably throw in another exercise that allows me to recover the next days, that allows me to still do productive work as well, and that allows me to also spend a little bit more time at the gym. You could, of course, also end up just like cutting it and do just like 5 days of a week of training or so, right? But for me, the emphasis is on like delts, abs, and the chest in particularly. And for that, you can always then throw in another exercise of something for the delts on those days that don't really take as much out of you, for example. On the lower body days, I'm even considering switching back to something like twice daily training, because that hamstring and also quad work in the same session is just very, very demanding, to be honest. In the first leg session, not so much, because I'm only doing like one hamstring exercise. But in the hamstring focused session, it's so hard to still do the required amounts of quad work as well. I know that it was a lot of information, lots to probably pick apart, because there's probably lots of useful things that we can actually then talk about.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
I just did my hamstring dominant session today, and it does absolutely destroy you when you have like quads afterwards. And
right,
like, the quads just can always take, for me at least, they just can handle more.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does fry you, but yeah, I jump between wanting to split them up and then realizing I tended a lot, at least over the last year, to just feel like once I've trained my legs and I've gone home, it doesn't matter if it was just like whatever it was. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to go back to the gym again. I'm just like, I do it all in one now because I'm just like, I'm done for torture for today. Whereas my upper body stuff, I'm like, yeah, I can train like back and chest in the morning and then come back and do like delts and arms or whatever. But yeah, for my lower body. But the thing I wanted to touch on was that I was like, yes, that's a really cool point because I don't think a lot of people talk about it, is that kind of first week getting into a new mesocycle, kind of feeling it out. And like, I call that like the foundational week. You're just kind of getting your baseline, everything sorted, like with exercise selection, with volume, like appropriate RARs. It's like, it might be a bit of a fiddly week in some ways. Like it might not be perfect from the get-go, but then from that week, you've kind of got your baseline and you can build from there. But it's like you said, and I say this to some clients where they're like, oh, should like, for example, like a down set. I see down sets as something you can pre-program, but I also personally auto-regulate them within my training. And that's something hard to give to a client. It's like you kind of have to know that that's an appropriate thing to use. And I can't give my less advanced or less experienced trainees that freedom to auto-regulate it, or auto-regulate. Some clients I'm like, yeah, you can auto-regulate your set volume, but I can't give that to everyone, or not even a lot of them. And some people don't want it. And it's the same like week one freedom. Like, you know yourself and you can kind of be like, oh, I had this exercise, but it made more sense to do this one or what have you. But when you're coaching someone, you, at least from the start, you can't kind of give them that freedom or even that knowledge, but down the line, you can like, that's the beauty of auto-regulation essentially.
Absolutely. And it's also important then to know that it's not just to add things, but also to do less.
Yes.
If you go in there and you feel like, holy shit, I just destroyed my quads with those 2 sets on a, I don't know, hack squat or so, but I have 3 sets prescribed, don't do those 3 sets. What does it add? Nothing, right? If you really can feel that you've disrupted that part of your body to a significant extent, cut it there. You don't have to do things just because they are on your logbook or so. I think, of course, this is very, very much where experience comes into play, and I don't want to sound like someone who has it all figured out for himself, because I clearly haven't. Right? There's still so much that I can learn about myself, but these are things. It's kind of like a journey, of course, right? Some are further ahead in the journey, and some just start the journey, right? When, I don't know, someone who just wants to. Well, take life, for example, right? Someone who is just entering his 20s has still so much in front of him to learn those things that other people, nearly each and every other human, is going through or has gone through when they are older already, right? And some things you just have to experience yourself, and some people are further ahead, even though that they are the same age as you, and some people are further behind you.
Yeah. No, that's very, very well put. In terms of, is there any exercises that are new that you're trying out, or anything different with this split, or is it still your kind of standard setup?
It's kind of a standard setup. Of course, when I'm picking and choosing some exercise, I always like to vary a little bit. So what I'm then referring to is something like, okay, that one mesocycle I may have had something like leg presses in there, and then I'm switching over to something like Smith machine squats. But I always have it pre-planned. It's not that I'm just like winging it or making those changes from mesocycle to mesocycle. It's more like, okay, going into the new macro cycle, and then I'm giving it a try. And sometimes in the session, also there, the first week, I then feel it out and feel like, no, the other exercise was actually better than this one, and my expectation of that exercise didn't match reality. Where it's like, I don't know, do I have an example? For example, I was switching over to machine letter raises again and thought like, no, let's give it a try. And I've realized very, very quickly that single arm cable letter raises do work so much better for me. And then I decided to switch back again the next time to those single arm cable letter raises. And these are also things that you will just realize at those first sessions, and then making those changes along the way is also absolutely all right. I still induced a hypertrophic stimulus. It's not that I've wasted time or any kind of effort or so. And this way, then you can create more and more a program that suits you. And then I'm making less and less and less changes over a very long time. And I'm someone myself who likes to keep things as they are for a very long time without making kind of major changes. So if I know that an exercise works for me, I don't really change it up often or a lot of times, because I just know that it works. And I think that people are often chasing some kind of sensation, when in reality they just need to stick to something. And because it's hard, right? If you're working at full capacity of something, because those neurological adaptations are fully maxed out, you're technically as efficient as you can get, what are you then doing? Of course, you need to work freaking hard to see some progress. But this is actually where you want to be, because otherwise, if you're changing things up too frequently, yes, you are making progress very rapidly on paper, but this is also not just not just like muscular adaptations, but probably a lot of those adaptations are still coming from neurological adaptations and getting technically more efficient. And I want to cut those things out because they are not really adding a lot to the hypertrophic stimulus that I want to provide. And I'm under the opinion that you want to become good at one thing, and that is inducing as much hypertrophic stimulus as possible. And instead of then trying to change things up the entire time, try to perfectionize those things. Did that make sense? Yeah. And how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I flip-flopped with this a little bit over the years, where I used to have like squat, bench, deadlift, always static in my program. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh, these lifts actually, I mean, they're power lifts. I don't need to do these as a bodybuilder, especially like low bar squat, deadlift off the floor. So then I would think, oh, variation, that seems to be important for hypertrophy. I need to vary exercises every like mesocycle or two. And so I went through a period of time where I would literally every mesocycle would switch movements. And I put myself in a horrible position of ignorance that is not bliss, where I felt like, oh, I'm rapidly improving. But it's like you just said there, I'm not actually seeing like muscular adaptations. I'm seeing neurological skill-based adaptations, where basically I'm just relearning the exercise to a certain degree. Like I'm not having to relearn it a ton because I'm not like a newbie at it. But if I looked at my lifts, I'm not hitting PRs. They're just kind of, I'm regaining the numbers that I'd hit previously. I could put this to an example, like my straight leg deadlift at the moment. Only today have I hit new territory. All my performances before today was just repeat performance of previous times. And now would be the temptation of being like, oh, I've just hit a PR. It's getting pretty hard now. Fuck, I'm going to go to an RDL. No. Now I need to fucking hit new territory again. And now it's like, this is game on. This is going to be really, really tough. And yeah, it'll beat me into the ground and I'll probably have to rotate it at some point. But I'm very much like you. It's like if you're progressing in a lift and it's not causing you kind of pain or discomfort or like extreme, like poor SFRs, for example, keep it in there. Keep going. Like you do not need to, if like this is a case where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because it isn't a case of, oh, you're just not changing because you're like obsessed with this lift or whatever. It's a case of, no, it's still providing a really productive stimulus.
And I think that this is where then the conception of what stalling in a lift comes in. Many people, and I think that I was guilty of that myself in the past, think that stalling is a bad thing, when in reality, it's actually a good thing because it just shows that you now need to work on it to get better at it and to cause some adaptations that are not just like neurologically driven or technically driven. We are also not powerlifters, so we are not expecting to see PRs each and every single week. And I'm not even saying that powerlifters do that or do expect to see some kind of PRs on a weekly basis, but you have to work for it, right? And especially as bodybuilders, we especially don't really expect to see kind of load progression on a weekly basis. Right? If you then can squeeze out one more repetition, great, good for you, right? But always remember this, that what it is that you're doing once you're going into the gym is overloading. Of course, over time, over a long period of time, you will of course get better at the task at hand. By that, it will become easier, and the stimulus that you're then providing is also dwindling down. But that curve is a long one. Because otherwise, we would see that the ones who have the longest training experience are also automatically the strongest, which is not the case. So sticking with the weight, sticking with the same repetitions can also be all right. Even for an entire mesocycle, even for an entire macrocycle, right? You are striving to get better. And you let the progress come to you. You're not chasing it under all circumstances or at any cost, because that cost is most of the time too hefty of a price to pay.
Yeah, there's a really, this alludes to kind of the chicken and the egg. Is it the PRs that's causing growth, or is it the growth that's causing PRs? And I think at least the evidence-based community is coming to the agreement, and through a lot of the work that Brian Miner has done, and he's done the presentation on our membership site. I was going to say membership. Shout out to Brian, and you can definitely join the members site and get a look into the nuances of progressive overload. But thanks to him, it's kind of a case of become more well established that you hit a PR because of all the work you've done previous, and therefore the growth you've caused. And you see this a lot with kind of, I think, clients maybe who aren't as well experienced with us and our practice and kind of, I guess, evidence-based practice in some ways, where they kind of finish a mesocycle and in week 4 they hit a certain number, and then they expect in week 1 of the next mesocycle at like maybe 3 reps in reserve or whatever to be able to, they have to beat that number that they achieved in the final week of the mesocycle. So no, compare week 1 to week 1, and maybe if you got stronger, sure, try and beat it. I do think there is a fine line where some people can become so, you have to stay on top of it. So, because some people might hear what Pascal's saying there and just be like, oh yeah, okay, I just kind of just lift the same weight all the time and just like, let it come to me. And it's like, well, you still need to look to get like pushing yourself harder over time. Otherwise, like you said, you'll adapt so much that what was once overloading now is like not overloading at all. But if you think about like, I don't know, any lift you're doing, if it's hard now, is that really truly going to become like easy in months? Maybe in months, but it's going to take a long time before it isn't actually still challenging to you and so challenging to cause kind of a stress response for growth. And I do catch myself sometimes, because you do have to be careful. Like today, for example, would be a perfect example. My straight leg deadlifts, I had in my head, I wanted to hit an all-time PR. And I was like, Steve, don't let your ego take control. If you're doing this lift and you get to rep 9 and you're completely and utterly fucked, don't go and break form for a rep 10 just to say you've hit new like territory. Yeah. And that's why you might have seen my story where I was really fucked off because my Versagrip fell off because the set was feeling outstanding and my Versagrip just like the Velcro just loosened and fell off. So I was like, fuck's sake. Anyway, I went into it and I managed to hit it, but you have to be so honest with yourself not to just chase the load and that progression, because like I would have been better off hitting 9 solid reps, not breaking down technique, not breaking form, getting that stimulus that's definitely driving growth. I could have just repeated week 1 performance and I still would have provided a growth stimulus. But you do have to keep also trying to get more and don't kind of get complacent with it. Make sure it's challenging.
No, absolutely. And this was once again much better put than I was able to do, and also the former you did much better than I was able to do. But that's exactly it. And I think that there are certain exercises that are more prone to butcher and to force the progression when in reality it isn't there. In particularly pulling movements from the ground, such as SLDL or so, and also then pulling movements in general. Something like pressing, or also even pressing movements, whether it is leg press movements, such as squats and also leg presses, Smith machine squats. Same goes for then chest press movements. They aren't really as forgiving. When you are not having like good technique and the muscle is getting to its limit, most of the time you can't really squeeze it out without it getting obvious for you. So for example, when your butt is coming off the bench like big time, or you're just like immediately failing, or you're just getting buried or so under the leg press weight, right? Especially in a leg press, like cheating, you will either start to cut range of motion or you will just be buried. Whereas when it comes to RDLs, SLDLs, sometimes you're so much in the zone that you don't really even notice that your back is already starting to round to a significant extent. You may then realize that the next day because you're all of a sudden sore in your erectors. But if you're not then regularly checking yourself with recording that form video, especially on pulling movements, then you can tend to just like progress super fast on paper, but in reality, you've basically just like sacrificed form for then load in your logbook.
I completely and utterly agree. Like on a pure example for me is like a machine press. You either have that rep or you don't have that rep. Like there's only so much you can fuck up on like a machine press where you're just like literally extending the arms forward.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to really take it to the house. But on like a row, it's so easy for your technique just to like, for you to use a little bit more momentum or like let other muscle groups come in or shorten your range of motion so you like raise your torso a little bit more. And what I have found for me personally on pulling movements is I have to be stricter with myself at the start of a mesocycle and not let my ego get in the way. Because sometimes I think I'm at like, oh yeah, I'm at 3 to 4 RER and it's like a 2. At best.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I try and keep like progressing forward each week, it's like, no, okay, I've hit a wall early. So whereas pressing movements, I can take it like a leg press, for example. Well, what you think is maybe a 2 is more like a 4. So you can really fucking push that thing. And same with RDLs and straight leg deadlifts. Like I make sure week 1 doesn't feel like hell at all. Like it feels very comfortable, like almost comfortable. Because I know it's soon going to get to that point where if exactly like you said.
Yeah, that's why I'm a big fan of, and you guys can check out the presentation over on either the member site, or we now offer the presentations as a standalone presentation over in our shop on our website, where I'm going through how to pre-plan your next mesocycle. And I think that this is a good method of keeping yourself accountable and trying to still have a reasonable approach to progress without chasing it too much. So you can then pre-plan things, because at some point you will expect that things will feel heavy. And if you're then not challenging yourself at times, you will probably never really progress. At the same time, though, you don't want to be overly aggressive. So this way, you can then plan to progress at least on a mesocycle basis. While it may not sound like like much, especially when you're then in the hardcore realm, right, where you are supposed to actually put up some load each and every single week. While it may not sound like much, if you do that on a consistent basis for the next 10 years, you have progressed insanely much. Of like when you're just adding at least 1 rep or maybe do a small jump in load, do that consistently for the next mesocycles, for the next years, you are progressing in a very, very realistic manner, right? Especially for a natural athlete, without running too much of a risk of actually then always resetting and maybe even running risk of injuring yourself because you push it too far, too fast. And also, you are not getting to that staleness or to that complacent state overall. And I think that this is why I always like to have a little bit of an increase from mesocycle to mesocycle, of like where I compare my previous mesocycle week number 1 with this week's with this mesocycle's week number 1, and try to there at least do a little bit more, because this way I can definitely have a realistic progression overall.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service,
At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
Absolutely, I'm completely the same. So you almost hit mini relative PRs each week. Like, so almost my week 1 performance was last mesocycle's week 2 performance with one more rep in reserve. And that's money. Like, if you could just keep doing that without getting injured consistently. I mean, you look at the progress, if I can use some anecdote that I've had since 2017 to that's what I did, 2017 to 2021. That's where that almost 10 pounds of lean muscle tissue came from, just consistently doing exactly that application.
And it's like you said, Steve, what are you expecting? That previous mesocycle, when it was hard there already, do you now expect that things that you did last mesocycle are all of a sudden super easy for you? No. And what is then the realistic expectation and result from that? Adding just a little bit, or you could even do that same thing another time, see whether it still feels kind of super hard or maybe a little bit easier, right? It's still overloading. At some point, of course, you want to see some kind of progress, either in the form of like increasing load or increasing some reps or so, because that's the easiest way to measure then also progress, and to add some overload as well. But once again, you don't have to rush things. And I think that people, I don't know whether there's too much of a misconception, or I don't know, looking at things in the wrong manner or so. I don't know really what's the reason for it. But if things were hard like last mesocycle, things won't get super easy here this mesocycle, and probably then you are still inducing a high level of hypertrophic stimulus.
I think it comes from what was and can be a really powerful idea and concept, but with the wrong understanding and application can lead you to injury, is the beat the logbook mentality. Beat the logbook every week, beat the logbook. But if you've literally just taken your set to not RAR that week, which a lot of these beat the logbook people tend to do, or failure, how do you fucking beat the logbook next week as an advanced trainee? You don't. You maybe use more momentum, you break down technique, you add in breathers, and that's all just leading to extra fatigue for very little stimulus. And it's just, for a lot of people, they burn out that way, and some people can survive it. And it's just the rare few, I find.
I think it's probably also too much of an emotional attachment to the thought and idea of progress and the thought and idea of beat the logbook. Maybe it's romanticized of like, I have to beat those numbers because, I don't know, my idols are doing that, or at least are claiming that they are doing it, without actually adding the context behind it of like something like form breakdown or so, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm exchanging one for the other. Worse form for more load also, right? And is that really like true progress or beating the logbook? No, it's just an exchange of metrics and values, so to speak. And also then the emotional aspect of it has nothing to do when it comes to looking at numbers. Numbers are numbers. Numbers are just this. They just tell you something, right? And that's why we have to stay objective with those things, because we can actually take a look at the numbers, be highly emotional, and drive this up because we want to see those metrics coming up. But in reality, we are blind for reality. It's the same when it comes to kind of, I don't know, when you're highly emotional about other things in life. That's particularly the reason why certain professionals aren't allowed to do practice on then their loved ones, their relatives, and all that kind of stuff, because it really makes you blind for many, many things. And if you then romanticize beating the logbook, then you become blind for what you actually have to do. You have to detach yourself emotionally from that. And how realistic is it to beat the logbook all the time? It's the same here. The ones with the most training experience would otherwise be the ones who would always be the strongest. And if we just take a look around, that's simply not how it is. The strongest and also the biggest, by the way. And that's simply not how it is. And just from that fact alone, you should realize that trying to always put up something on a weekly basis is probably not a realistic outcome or even endeavor that you should pursue.
Well said. I'm going to tangent. We kind of talked about your training and we got to this topic. Nutrition, how's that looking? Is that changed at all? Are you in a surplus now?
Yeah, slight surplus. I was just weighing myself here, and it's not far away from back in October, but I'm now sitting at around. Wow. I mean, I'm at around 75.5, somewhere around there. The lowest I had right before stage was 72.3, I think it was, somewhere around there. Okay. So it's not that far away, right? No. I mean, it's all right, but of course, it always plays tricks on you, right? When it's kind of, it is freaking cool to just be leaner. That's just something. It's freaking amazing to see. At the same time, though, it's kind of the irony is that this is the worst place for you mentally as well. And it just sucks because you're just easily irritable and you're hungry and all that kind of stuff. Okay, hunger wasn't really that issue, but those mood swings, the lethargy, sleep is even impacted and stuff, right? And these two are in a relationship. They should never really be in a relationship. They just don't do each other well. And that's why I think 75 is still freaking all right. If you really think about it, how far I've pushed it in the last kind of off seasons. I was always like in the mid 80s up to close to 90, right? And now sitting at around 75 and feeling good. It's a little bit of a different one.
I was going to try I needed to see what I was in pounds. So I am from pounds to kilos, because you always use kilos. I don't know why. I am stuck on pounds. 83.4 I am at the moment. So I am a little over 10 pounds above stage weight still. Yeah, depending on what stage weight you decide to choose for me. I am 10 pounds up from like the UK DFBA finals, but more like closer to 15 pounds up from the WNBF world finals. So I'm also, but I'm one of those people that I just tend to feel pretty like, it's funny though, because I think I'm in my own head here, but that sounds like not very much above stage weight, because it's not. But I look at myself and I'm like, oh, fuck me, I'm so soft like compared to stage. I'm like, wow. So yeah, actually I need to do some update photos because I'm coming to that deload time. So I'm excited to get those and share them. And
how do you feel overall? Probably good, right?
Yeah, good. My app, like the thing I'm really happy about, this might sound a bit weird to some people, maybe yourself included, but you, not because you know who I like my context, but I feel great and my appetite is really good. Like I'm hungry. I'm still like, I'm not starving. Like I haven't got an issue. I'm not like super food focused, but I'm hungry. Like my appetite is still like, yeah, give me more, give me more. So that's really nice because I'm sitting on like 3,700 calories. Like, so it's a good amount of food. Yeah. And so I'm glad my appetite is still like nice and high because I want that to stay in that situation for as long as possible. So yeah, I've gained maybe 3 to 4 pounds in this past mesocycle. Kind of finished my recovery diet sitting about 180 pounds. So gained about a kilo or so during this past mesocycle, which is a really like nice rate of gain. And I've, like I said, I hit a PR on my straight leg deadlifts, best I've ever hit for a straight leg deadlift, which was 167.5 for 10. And I think the technique was pretty good. And I hit a PR on my bent over row, dumbbell bent over rows, because they don't even have the dumbbells that I used here in my previous gym, which I was really pleased about. A lot of my pressing movements and like leg movements are new, so I don't know where those are really, but they're decent. So I think I have already grown new muscle now. I think I'm officially in proper improvement territory, which is great. Which is really great.
I mean, the thing is also my views have kind of changed over the years. There was a time where I thought like, yeah, you should be leaner even in the off season. And then there was a time where I thought like, no, you should actually gain quite a decent amount. And then I'm back again where I'm just like, okay, for a natural athlete, you actually don't really want to deviate too much from your stage weight. Of course, we're not talking about absolutely diced and shredded. From that point, you want to bump it up really quickly, right? And then from there, go into a reasonable range, right? Because that, I don't know, Dirk-like shreddedness is also something, I mean, it is a special level of shreddedness and that not many can accomplish, and especially he's also someone who stays fairly lean in the off-season even, can get away with that. But I think that you don't really want to push it up to 30 or 40 pounds above stage weight. Maybe once in your career, but on a consistent basis, I mean, it must also be said, of course, to be fair, that sometimes it's the same, or it's the saying from, I think it was Alberto said it, that sometimes the body fat you feel the most comfortable in is not the body fat that you are performing the best. And that, if that's the case for you, then of course you want to maybe even push it higher than necessary just in order to perform better, and by that making better progress.
I've bounced around with this a little bit. I think it's almost similar in some ways. People seem to view, some people, that you need to see new body weights, like new high body weights to grow muscle. That's kind of similar to the idea that you have to see like PRs to grow muscle, and maybe eventually, but I don't think that is like, that definitely doesn't work for bodybuilding. It's a case of, yeah, you want to see new body weight, like heights or body weight with better condition. That's what you want. I don't need to go over 205 pounds to eventually gain muscle. Yeah. Like, I'm gaining it now.
Do you think that this comes also there, same as with some kind of peaking methodologies and all that kind of stuff, still from the enhanced realm? Because of course, when you are pushing up there the body weight, you can be rest assured that probably you gain a shit ton of additional muscle mass. Whereas when we're taking a look at some of very, very good naturals, their scale weight or their stage weight has maybe then changed over 10 years by just 1 pound or so, but they've gotten leaner and leaner and muscular and more muscular on a consecutive basis.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right. I think a lot of the kind of things where we're like, why is that a thing? We don't have any good like actual rationale for it. Like, you can try and work it out, but I think a lot of those do come from the enhanced side of just like the just kind of old school bodybuilding approaches, which I think is fine. Like they exist for a reason, but not always applicable towards naturals. But it's like you said there, I think the key variable is being in a body fat where you feel productive, because the ultimate driver of muscle growth is not your body weight. It is, are you having good performance in the gym? So whatever body fat you need to be at to have your best performance in the gym, that is probably the key to you growing muscle. So for me, like, once I get to a point of body fat where I'm feeling a bit shit, like, and that's going to impact my performance in the gym, mini cut, like, come back down, because there is no point me getting above that and just continuing to have like pretty mediocre gym performance, potentially feeling really sick in myself, feeling really unhealthy and not very productive. But just in the same way for someone else, there's no point them being excessively lean just because, I should stay leaner, if their gym performance is not in a great position and they're feeling lethargic all the time, their sleep isn't great. You basically want to be in that range, which is going to be slightly different for everyone. Yeah, that's kind of, because people have asked me like, are you going to push to like over 200 pounds this off season? I'm like, maybe. I don't know.
If it's productive.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly the answer. Only if it's productive. Otherwise, I won't. I will not go there, because I feel productive. I'm productive now. So to think I'm still going to be productive then, maybe. But I could see myself staying away from pushing much over 200 pounds.
I think,
and then you see...
Oh,
sorry, I actually don't have anything else to say.
Okay. I think sometimes there's a detachment from other things in life. And I think you can easily draw comparisons to how you would behave in other scenarios in life. And I think that not many people reflect upon their own behaviors when it comes to these things. And I know where this is coming from, because in the moment, of course, not every decision that you're making, not every behavior that you have is very well thought out or thought through, where it's like you're in the moment. Sometimes you just go with what feels right. But also there, it's kind of, why what you do when it comes to learning, for example, for a test? Would you learn more than is necessary or productive would you sit down and learn for 10 hours when after 8 hours, your brain is just like complete mush and you can't really push anymore? Every kind of thing that you're reading, you're just like, I don't know, glancing over, but nothing really sticks with you. What are you going to do? Push even harder? Because at some point it has to stick? No, probably it's better to just like step away from a moment, take a break, maybe even if it's just for an hour or so. It's probably better to then come back instead of trying now. Like, brain, either we work together or we won't, right? You can't put kind of ultimatums on kind of your brain or other aspects, right? At some point, you will probably need to take a break or stop doing what it is that you're doing in order to have a productive outcome. There are so many things in life that I can think of where we are doing that. But ironically enough, we aren't really doing those kind of things when it comes to bodybuilding. We always think that, for example, doing more is better, having a more aggressive or more focused approach is even better as well, whereas sometimes it isn't, right? And thinking about it a little bit more so, just also there, quite unemotionally is the way to go. And I think that sometimes we just too much have our emotions attached to our decision making. We want desperately that something is true when in reality, no way we twist and turn it, it won't become reality and it won't become true.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's funny because saying something is easy is such a weird idea, because sometimes the harder thing to do is what you think is the easier thing to do. As bodybuilders, we thrive with hard and doing more and driving ourselves into the ground. And then the harder thing to do is actually what on paper is the easier thing to do, like a deload or leaving a few in the tank, or like not going full out with your volume or calorie deficit or cardio, or like trying to optimize every little detail, and then you don't have any time to de-stress and promote sleep and what have you, or sacrificing sleep because you need to get your fasted cardio in or something along these lines. It's like, well, like it's like that. You have to look at the really successful bodybuilders who've been in there for a long, long time and see how they have gone about things. And very rarely is it those who have like been super like blinders on, nothing else in life matters. Maybe for short stints of time, and I think that's okay. Maybe in a contest prep, I think you have to do that a little bit, but not long term. You do see people burn out and they like stop doing it. And then what's the best bodybuilders are the ones who have been doing it the longest. So you need to find an approach that is going to be sustainable in the long term.
And just something to think about is, even if we're then taking a look at what are the most successful people doing, does that really apply to you? Is it necessary to do those kind of things? Do you want to, or do you see yourself being on the same level as the most successful bodybuilders? Do you have to do these kind of things in order to be successful and see the outcomes that you want to see? Because, of course, someone who just wants to look good, he doesn't have to do all those kind of things. So why are you taking care of those kind of small kind of things that you have no business even thinking of? Because you're not in that position. If you can't even hit your macros on a daily basis consistently, you don't even need to think about, like, I don't know. there are plenty of things.
Blood glucose.
Yeah, something like that, for example, yeah. Right? There have been so many things over the past years where it was just like, this is something that you don't really need to think about, right? For the vast majority of people, if you don't have the aspirations of becoming the best bodybuilder in the world, right, and also you don't have what it takes from a genetic perspective and all that kind of stuff, then the question is then, like, do you really have to go to such extreme measures in order to see what it is that you want to see? And the answer is most of the time, no. There just needs to be a certain requirement of dedication and commitment. And once you do that on a consistent basis, I think that you will go a long way. But also there, once again, the anticipation of what that actually is also most of the time off from what it is that you then need to do, for example, especially also the length. Yeah,
I think it's a great subject. and a great note to leave people on is, especially because I think the vast majority of our listeners aren't that person who is aiming to be like their ultimate best. But you could even take it as far as just looking at me. And if people are trying to copy me and they aren't that like competitive bodybuilder, they don't need to do everything I do even and I'm not doing some really extreme things because I just don't think they're like fruitful. I think they're kind of pointless. No. But like, I think a lot of people think they need to do X, Y, and Z, when in reality, like you start coaching them, and you can just like, seriously, you don't need, like if it's too much for you doing all of that, we can take away like 25%. You can still get 80% of the results that you would have got. We can take away hours of like thinking and time and effort that you can put towards other things. And yes, just accept that you're going to get less results, but it might be worth that trade-off of what everything else you're going to get. And you might burn yourself out if you go all in all the time. And then you're like, oh, I can't do bodybuilding. It's just too much.
I think in the past we've talked about it, those people who are claiming like, yeah, this gives me an additional like 5%, or even if it does like 1% of a difference, I want to actually tick all of the boxes. The thing is, you don't have any kind of evidence that it actually does add any kind of value. Perhaps it could even be because, once again, you're lacking the evidence of having a calculated outcome or be able to measure it in any kind of way. And how can you then tell that it is being productive? It could even be that it's detrimental. Because if you can't measure that, how would you be able to tell? Just because you feel it? No, absolutely not. Humans have made so many statements about what they perceive to be reality or what they think they feel is the case, when in reality it was either the opposite or had nothing to do with the actual what was actually happening. Right? So when it comes to those kind of things, it's the same when it comes to me scrolling through social media. I bet so many people are scrolling through social media or are clicking through the web and feel that they've done something productive. But if they were to combine everything, write it out of like, what have you accomplished here today? Many people would realize how little they've actually accomplished because they were distracted by so many things. But because you were constantly doing something, it felt productive. And it felt like you made some progress. But in reality, you've just wasted time.
And there was an actual great example of that. I forget what it was like a testosterone booster, where basically initially studies came out and showed it to be positive, and then a bunch of studies came out to show that it was the opposite and completely negative. So yeah, I'm very like you said, that person who's like, oh, but it might do something. Yeah, I mean, but it might do something negative as well.
Unfortunately, though, in that position, when someone has been doing that and has even promoted that, due to just like human psychological traits, most people won't really backtrack on their statements or won't stop doing what they did up to this point, because that would be admitting to themselves that they were wrong. And that is something that many people, of course, me, myself included, I'm not excluding myself to that, it's very hard to do and very hard to accept, especially, and we see it with especially people who have been doing things for like decades. Those are the ones who are then in that disbelief and ignorant state, because it would be psychologically too crushing to admit that you've been doing, or maybe you've dedicated your entire life to something that was ending up being a lie. And you see that, unfortunately, quite often in the bodybuilding realm or fitness realm as well. So I think the thing that I at least want to say here, there's so many things that we don't really even need to think about too much or need to kind of concern ourselves with, and time can be better spent with other things. And yeah, that's basically what I want to say.
On that bombshell, should we call it?
We call it.
Guys, wish me luck. Next time you'll see me with a Vegeta on my arm.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to be showing it off all the time, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
And this room will also be painted. It should be painted on Saturday.
Nice.
I've got all the paint behind me, and hopefully the painter, or I think it's only one guy, hopefully he does it all in one day.
Well, it could be. Depends on how he does it. For my room, I think it took like 3 days actually.
Oh, fuck that.
Oh.
No, I'm hoping he can do it in one day, or he's got a team.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because if it's just a paint job, then it can go quite quickly. If they have to take things down and all that kind of stuff, then it takes a little bit longer.
Should just be paint, hopefully. So not that you can probably even tell. It'll probably look very similar actually, because this is slightly green. It'll look slightly grey.
All right. Cool.
And as always, guys, please do like, comment, subscribe. Give us all the love. We appreciate it. Oh, last time we got a few volcanoes come through.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know what sort of word it is so late in the game to try and give people a word.
Hashtag volcano, eh?
Now it's going to be tattoo this time.
Yeah, exactly. Tattoo.
So cheers, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Steve. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.